You need research as the first entry point, for anything that you need to do.
Yeah.
Because research provides you the pathway.
Yes.
I've just mentioned some international partners where I've done research for them on political economy analysis and how they've run with it and how they've made successes of it.
Yes.
But sadly, research does not inform our policy and inform our practice. I think that is the missing point.
Exactly.
So we need research, to inform our policy and to inform our practice. Okay. So once research is able to inform our policy and inform our practice, you see a change.
FG appoint Ochogwu, Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, DG. Welcome to AkweyaTV, and this is the report we have for you this moment. I am Idaju Aja.
All right, if you are Nigerian, living in Nigeria, you probably, I can assure you, have experienced poor network reception a million times. And I actually tell you, it's a zillion times. To make your virtual meeting experience crystal clear and have an excellent audio output, you need fast internet speed. This eliminates the chances of having a lagging audio or unclear audio. Determine which of the networks in your area has the most reliable connectivity and subscribe to that. Thankfully, in Nigeria, we all subscribe to services of more than one network provider. So this will be easy to determine because, you remember those 4 SIM phones, 5 SIM phones? Well, we all have dual SIM phones right now. It is advisable to use a router when hosting your virtual internet online and also have a backup plan. At the end of the day, if you properly plan your event and miss out on good connectivity, you have just all but waste your own time. Stay tuned for more comms, tips and tricks from ISO Media and follow us on our social media channels at ISO Media, and then do share this content with your friends and family and professional colleagues.
Nigeria's foremost think tank on the healing of fissures in the society, the federal government-owned Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, IPCR, has a brand new Director General. He is Joseph Peter Ochogwu, who until the appointment was Director of Research and Policy Analysis in the Institute. AkweyaTV had an interview with him in his office where he talked about his experiences, an entry point into the Institute, and strategies he will adopt in the resolution of conflict. Take a watch.
Hi, my name is Suleiman Mohammed Mukhtar, and I am the Strategic Communication Manager of Accountability Lab, the Nigerian office. And I'm here on the Fifth Estate Show, which airs on Facebook every Friday by 7 p.m. Don't miss it.
You're welcome to AkweyaTV, and we're having this conversation at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution, where we have a new Director General of the Institute. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much. Welcome Akweya Television to the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution.
Yeah. We know you as Dr. Joe Ochogwu, a peace and conflict resolution expert, an academic. But if people want to really know about you, what are the key things they should know?
I think first and foremost, I'm a father and a husband, and I have a very strong inclination actually for issues around peace, development, security, and good governance. Yes. And I've been working in this sector for the last over 20 years. And with some bit of modest achievement, within the field. In the Institute, I've been in the Institute for over 20 years. And within that 20 years period, there are some milestones, in terms of getting the British Chevening Scholarship, to UK to go and study peace studies. Okay. And then the Israeli Marshall Fellowship, for a training in Israel on community conflict management, as well as a doctoral research. I actually got a master's peace studies in the Institute and a doctoral degree as well in the Institute. So I think to a very large extent, the institute has been fair to me, you know, in all honesty, and in terms of capacity development and all that. I've worked in the presidential villa in the office of the chief of staff as special assistant for like 6 years with Jonathan, and then with the Buhari government, and then I left, came back to the institute, and then left the institute again to work in the British Department for International Development, DFID, for 1 year as conflict advisor, where I oversighted the Nigerian Stability Reconciliation Program, as well as the Nigerian Conflict Management and Stabilization Program for the Northeast, you know, which was managed by a consortium of Mexico, Center for Humanitarian Dialogue, Radio Dandakura, and then some downline community-based organizations and all that. I do consultancy, you know, for international developments as well, and it might interest you to note that the political economy analysis that I do for certain of these organizations, for example, the State Voice Accountability Initiative, you know, Savvy, that's right, you know, we did the political economy analysis for them, that transited that program from Savvy FEPA, you know, into PEL, you know, the Partnership to Engage and Learn, you know, which is a very fundamental work. And I've done some political economy analysis on the 8th National Assembly, you know, and all that. The whole idea of the political economy analysis is that it helps to provide a programmatic focus for these international programs in Nigeria, for them to know where they can intervene and deliver, you know, specifically and all that, in terms of some of the likely challenges the programs are going to face, what are the risks, you know, how are they going to mitigate some of the risk and overcome it, and how they're going to provide the entry point for the programs really to enter. And there is a remarkable one by I did for the British Council on the European Union funded Active Citizen Transformation Program Act, which is a 5 years program and is running. And the political economy was on civil society operations in Nigeria. You know, and that has provided a very good pathway in terms of some of the inadequacies of the Nigerian civil society, how to build their capacity in terms of their internal working mechanism, you know, to make them implement programs, their capacity to implement programs and all well. So you see all this knowledge, experiences and everything bring to bear, you know, in the institute, you know, to note that one of the major mandates of the institute is that the institute serves as a catalyst, you know, between the state and non-state actors, you know, between the government and civil society organization. So you can see that the kind of experience I bring, you know, on board, you know, is going to help to bridge this gap, you know, between the state and non-state actors. Fundamentally, too, is to say that in the last decades in Nigeria, we've been approaching conflict management from a much more kinetic approach, you know, and that really hasn't helped matters. So we're going to be seeing and working hand in hand with the new people too that the present government has appointed in terms of the National Security Advisor, the Secretary to Government, the Chief of Staff, and some other people that are going to be coming on board, is to see how we can promote the non-kinetic approach and mainstream it in terms of our governance system in the country. Because if you look at issues around conflict, they are all cross-cutting and they are intersectorial. So it therefore means that you can't leave any of these sectors alone. So we need to mainstream conflict prevention, conflict sensitivity, you know, in the way we govern. You know, because until we are able to do that, we'll continue to proliferate in our crisis, in our conflicts and all that. So for us to have a turnaround, we need to mainstream conflict prevention and conflict sensitivity as a major approach, you know, in our governance's approach on how we deliver, you know, to the Nigerian people, you know, that. So I think that is my entry point for this interview.
And that's amazing because, I mean, you've got every zone in the country affected by, you know, huge amounts of conflict, where there's been a lot of work by different partners. And I was wondering whether your role, therefore, is rather coordinating with these groups, or what's going to be your priority?
I think for us, first and foremost, we're a research think tank. What that means is that we engage in cutting-edge, innovative researches, you know, that are empirically founded, you know, to try to deliver on some of these things. And what you do with research basically is that it's the world of ideas, you know, that is scientifically proven. It therefore means that you don't just go to the field for the sake of going to the field without enough evidences. What has dominated our environment is what I call anecdotal evidences in terms of our governance approach, our policy approaches, and how we go about solving some of our problems. Largely, they are not empirically informed. You know, somebody who is in charge just wakes up overnight and is just intervening. It doesn't work that way. You know, so you need research as the first entry point, you know, for anything that you need to do. Because research provides you the pathway. I've just mentioned some international partners where I've done research for them on political economy analysis and how they've run with it and how they've made successes of it. But sadly, research does not inform our policy and inform our practice. I think that that is the missing point. So we need research, you know, to inform our policy and to inform our practice. So once research is able to inform our policy and inform our practice, you see a change.
So how are you going to do that? Because the policymakers, I know that you've worked in research and policy, but how are you going to do this in terms of getting the policymakers who are mainly politicians to now start thinking of this? I
think the point is that, like I tell people, we are at the verge of a point whereby we cannot afford to lose any opportunity, you know, in terms of bringing about change in our conflict environment. And like you rightly mentioned already, there is what I call the liberalization of conflict and violence, you know, across all the nooks and crannies of Nigeria. So we have no choice than to deal with it. And the political class to understand that we need that change. We need that change, you know, for us to get a better society. And if you don't do those changes, you are most likely not going to get good governance, get service delivery to the people, you know, and all that. So what I will be doing going forward will be to break into bits. Into bits. Not a chunk, but just a bit. So the political class can chew a bit of it and have a proper understanding of it and run with it. That is what I'm going to be doing. So I might not, we'll do researches, but I won't be producing volumes of books, you know, that is just hanging out in the shelf. No, I won't do that. I'll just do strategic policy briefs, you know, break them into bits and into actionable bits, and then send them to the end users and follow up with the end users. You know, and get some of our experts in the house, you know, to follow up on the end users. One thing we've not done what we've been doing in the institute here actually has been that, one, we understand that peace is an all-inclusive process. And it's not something one man or one individual or one organization can run it all. So it's an all-inclusive process. So we need to leverage that, you know, to ensure that whatever research we do, you know, the end users receive it, and then we follow up, you know, in terms of our research monitoring capability, you know, to ensure that some of these things are done. Note too that one of the roles we play is advisory. So it is led for the principals, you know, to accept those advice or not to accept those advice. There is a second component to which we do, you know, which has to do with advocacies and interventions, you know, where we do work at the state community levels. You know, we do have programs at the community level. One of the things we need to do again is what I'll be doing is to change our paradigmatic approach in terms of how we engage with local communities. You don't go do one-off hit and run conflict intervention approaches. It doesn't work. It's not sustainable, you know. So how do we sustain our programmings, you know, and then perhaps also get some of our principals to begin to understand the uniqueness of these institutes and the uniqueness of the budgeting component that is going to come from the National Assembly, you know, in terms of the Appropriation Act, and how we are going to deliver, you know, on our programs. You know, the way the budgeting system is right now does not in any way reflect the sustainability of our programs and all that. So we'll be discussing that with some of our principals and to plead that perhaps they hear us out and see how we can run this program. Because if our Appropriation Act does not speak to the IPCR Act, and there is a divergence, then it's going to be difficult to actually achieve the objective goals, you know, for which the institute was itself established in the first place. So there is a need, you know, for convergence in terms of how we design programs, how we implement programs, you know, and how we're able to get the result with the Appropriation Act as well as the IPCR Act. I think that has been a very major gap, which we need to fill up. And we can't do that alone here. We need to discuss with our principals and get them to understand the uniqueness of our programs and our interventions so they can buy into it, so that we don't just do these hit and run conflict intervention programs and then you begin to ask, where is the value for money?
So are you saying that with research, Nigeria can surmount its security and conflict, challenges?
I can assure you one thing, and I've said this before, in the Office of the National Security Advisor, what knowledge brings, what do criminals and violence actors bring is the knowledge that they understand. So what we too need to bring on the field is the knowledge that we understand. And superior knowledge oftentimes is going to counter off inferior knowledge. So, and the criminals and the violent actors, they work on this whole issue of violence. They work on our conflict fault line in terms of they take advantage of our heterogeneity, our diversity, manipulate it. So at the level of research, we need to understand this thing properly. And then our actioning agencies too need to understand that this is what it is. I can assure you very well that with goodwill and political will, on the part of the actioning agency, on the part of various government actors and civil society actors, we will surmount these challenges that we are having. If we look at the international front line, for example, in terms of what are the incidences and the developments around the Sahel region, what is happening in the Sahel region? Increasingly, if you look at it in Nigeria here, you look at what we call the ruralization of violence. Which is not what anybody have taken cognizance for. So both the literatures and what people are talking about largely is ungoverned spaces, ungoverned spaces, ungoverned spaces. And I've mentioned at the Office of National Security Advisor when they were doing the last national security strategy, if you don't have the right conceptualization, then your ability to be able to design programs to counter it is going to be faulty. So there is a need there for to have a very apt conceptualization of the problems and challenges that you face. So that you can design the right solutions and approaches, to mitigate these things. So there is no alternative to research. You don't wake up from Bepalo from your dreams and think you want to solve societal problem. Research is at the heart, of resolving societal problem. And it's a multidisciplinary stuff, where you bring, if it has to do with bringing the sociologists or a grounded educationist to address certain problems. By all means. But to just get people who just wake up overnight from anywhere and then begin to run policies and run programs and run practice, it's not going to get us anywhere. So I think that we need more empirical evidences, to support our policy in order for us to change practice. And that is the only way we can get reform. If you are talking of subsidy removal, for example, what level of research do we put into it? If you are talking of currency exchange and all that, what level of research do we put into it? So the evidences should be very clear. And what the evidences does is that it points out risks, that you are most likely going to encounter and then helps you with mitigation strategy on how to overcome it. So it's not something you wake up in the office and then you just run into it and then tomorrow, that is like more of damage control, So we need to change these things and it has to be incremental, and I believe that, because we are all tired of the problem, both the political class, the masses, the society itself, all the stakeholders are tired of the problem. So we have no choice than to pursue the solutions. And that is critically what the Institute is going to be doing. Solution provide provision. For different stakeholders for us to try to get it and get it off our way.
Finally, just before we go, because we've taken a lot of your time, is that analysts have blamed, they've fingered social media, mass media, artificial intelligence, fake news as a big driver of conflicts in Nigeria. And is there something, are you as worried about this phenomenon?
I think social media, they've come to stay. And like I've said in some training outlets, where I have trained, the Android phone, the iPhone, the internet is a two-edged sword. For good and for bad. How are we going to use it in our society? How do we control certain things in our society to make sure that these things work for our development, for our security, and for our peace? And it is not, there is not so much to which you can do. But what you can do is that how do you dominate the forces of evil within your own context, within your own environment? I think that is what is key. Social media reigns, but it's open for all stakeholders. So how much of social media, for example, is the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution willing and ready to use and invest on, to counter certain narratives. So there are certain things that I'm working on already, that, of course, with other partners, because there is what we call the counter narratives. Until you're able to provide counter narratives to your citizens, your citizens are going to be vulnerable. So what is our information management mechanism? Are we going to be just working on issues around propaganda, or will come down to district level to which we provide apt, right information on what is going? If you look at the issue of subsidy removal, for example, it is very clear that all the political parties, we are on one course, that we cannot continue with the subsidy. So the point now is that how do you get the Nigerian citizen to buy into this dream, this vision, that, okay, in the next 6 months, I'm really going to suffer. I'm really going to pay this price for my country to grow. And they too need to believe you that there are no wastages or leakages, that explain some certain kind of outrageous ostentation on the part of the political elites. So we need to marry those things. And it is high time we actually marry those things. Otherwise, I think our society is at a cliff where we can no longer afford certain kind of luxuries, of what we do. We need to come to terms with the reality that we need to move our society forward. So social media, you can't blame it. It's there to stay. And it's not something you can govern in real sense of it, because there is also the dark media in the social media. You understand the point? So how do we use the social media itself to promote what we believe and what we stand for? How do we take ownership? How do we put large investment in terms of search engines for our country, the way the Chinese people have done? So these are the things that I think that we need to think going forward. If, for example, we don't support certain attitudes, that are dominant in the Western world, how do we create our own space too in the social media world to ensure that we propagate what we believe in? Now, I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. So we need to take it up. We have the knowledge in the country that are already going out, to further promote some of these things. So we need to, come in-house to do some of these things. And where there is a regulatory mechanism that is acceptable, that does not deprive anybody of freedom or right, of course, why not? And of course, you cannot be in social media and say you cannot be regulated in terms of you just go there and insult somebody. I can go to court and take judgment against you. So we need to really bring up all these things, to the front burner, so that people know that you just don't sit in the comfort of your house to blackmail certain people. You go to court and you pay for it, and you pay dearly. So by the time we are able to do that, and then we'll now begin to see that things begin to regulate themselves. Because what human beings need actually, human beings need a space for expression. They also need a space for regulation. Because if there is no regulation, I could obviously take over your own space. So there must be that regulation, to check my conduct, as a human being that live within a society that is defined by law and order.
Wow. Thank you very much, sir. We really congratulate you, and you have a good grounding of this, and we wish you the best in this. As AkweyaTV, we're a development TV, so we would like to work along with you all the way. Participatory communication, all of that.
Thank you.
We really wish you the best.
Thank you so much for being the front runner media house. And then we look forward to working with your outlets and several other outlets in promoting issues of peace, conflict resolution, and national development, for the good and well-being of our people and those who are coming to Nigeria. And also note that we have our mandate cutting across Africa as well. So we really have a lot of work to do, instead of let the internal conflict not overwhelm us. We have mandates to do some things with ECOWAS, African Union, United Nations systems, civilian peacekeeping operations, and all those components of it, that we need to dust our files up and dust and wear our shoes and then wear our kits, and hit the ground running, and all that. So I really want to thank you for being the frontline media person to come. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
And that's where we wrap up the show for today. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channels. Thanks for watching. I am Idajo Aja.